choosing a block to do this technique with, you wouldn't choose something that you could easily do using the methods that you already know. So it's a good opportunity for you to choose blocks that are a little bit more directional, that maybe don't lend themselves to being done without a lot of effort using a cardboard model or using your circles, sphere beret and your Baker Boy and so on. So I've brought this block in here, and you can see here we won't get the exact shape, and none of them will. They're making the pattern will change the feel of the hat somewhat, because obviously you can only make flat material do what flat material does. Whereas if you block a felt or something over this, it'll take up every little nuance, and it will form a very faithful shape. So, for instance, on this one, we'll have to have seams. You can't do a flat pattern hat without seams. So where might you put your seams on here if you were cutting this open? And don't be afraid to say the obvious.
I would say on the ridges.
On the ridges, yeah, that's a really good place. So then you've got effectively a variant on your tip and side band, yes. And then what about the side? Where might you put the seam for that?
The seam at the back.
You could do the seam at the back.
Yeah.
The other alternative, which is also something that if you go and have a look at your hats at home, often you'll find hats like this with a seam there and a seam there. So there'll be two seams at the side, and it'll be roughly equal distance from there back to there, and there up to there. And this is where you're shifting the seams for reasons that to do with either economy of use of the fabric, which is important, or it could be to create like a smart design. You might have a seam down the side with two little eyelets on either side, and that way you have a bit of fresh air blowing in on the head. The other alternative is you might have a seam around there, or a band that looks like it's a band but it's built into the hat. So full marks to all of you for working that out.
So why would you use this method for something like that which can just be blocked in the usual way?
If you want it to be a flat pattern hat, which you can bang out on your sewing machine, then you can do that. And certainly for streetwear and stuff like that. If you're paying, you know, $20, $30, $40, $50 for your felt, and then you've got to then block it and make it and sell it, it becomes quite an expensive hat. Whereas if you're just buying a piece of fabric for this and the interlinings, you can probably get the materials cost down below $20 for the hat. So it's that kind of thing, and also the feel of the hat and the casual feel of the hat as well. Here's another one which you could do a variety of cutting lines. You might do the cutting lines matching the lines of the block, but then maybe another seam line that goes down the sides. Or you could start in the tip and the top of this one, and then divide it up into sections. Maybe if it was equal sections, you might just do that mathematically using your circle. But if it's if you want it to the seams to be in a slightly different place, eccentric place, or have an odd number of pattern pieces, like for instance if you wanted to have a pattern piece across the front and then divide the rest up, then you'd need to do that. And be aware that, like an orange peel, if you squash that flat, eventually you'll have to cut into it to make it so that it goes into a 3D complex thing. Now this one we were talking about before, we were drawing on this. We've cut off the collar. We're pretty pleased with the shape that we've created. In fact, again, all credit to Bronwyn. This has taken me probably less than an hour to do this, and that's sort of knocked off a whole night's work for someone, and then the next person has to join a longer queue if they're using a block that's popular. So normally these kind of styles would be good for streetwear, that kind of thing, and as I said, making a hat that would not be easy to make using one of the methods that we already know how to do. The other thing I wanted to talk about is these indents. I want you to just be aware. If you make the hat big enough to put on the block, you can put it back on the block and press it. But I have yet to find an interfacing that is good enough to actually keep holding the shape. So it won't. The awful thing about this is they won't look quite as good as some of the bought ones that come over from China, because those dear darlings, they know things we don't know about interlinings. So if anybody comes up with the secret of how to do a permanent and indent that stays, talk to me, because I'd love to know. But just accept the possibility that it will have the basic shape, but it may not. Well, anything that you make a pattern from will change character a little bit after you've taken it from 3D back to 2D and then back up to 3D. So that's something that you need to be aware of before you get too carried away. Thank you.